practitioners, and the courts will issue the first protective notice certificates to debtors from August the 19th in the first steps towards solving the country's massive debt problem. But what are the implications for this for struggling mortgage holders? Karl Deeter from Irish Mortgage Brokers joins me now to discuss this. You're very welcome, Karl.
Thank you.
OK, let's talk about these two things and what it means for people right at home now, sitting watching Ireland AM, who are tearing their hair out because they can't pay their mortgage. How is this going to affect them? Is it going to alleviate the stress they're currently undergoing?
Well, the fact that it comes into existence won't make any difference. If it's a case, though, that you wanted to apply for one of these solutions to your debt problems, well, then it means it's finally a live thing. It's no longer a proposal that you're just reading about or hearing about. It will actually be a process that you can enter into and potentially get a result out of. So
you've another option besides dealing with the bank?
Well, no, because you still have to deal with the bank.
This is the issue, yeah.
You still got to deal with the bank, and a lot of the solutions are predicated on having that negotiation with the bank or having been engaged with the bank for a certain amount of time before you can enter into the solutions, such as personal insolvency or debt settlement arrangements or bankruptcy even. So there's no getting away from dealing with the bank. What you can get away from, though, is this idea that there is never going to be an end to your problems, because what started in 2007, and let's not forget we're 6 years on from that, really has had no fixed end date. The solution that we have is a magic concoction that's getting made up as we go along. We don't know what the ingredients are. We don't even know if it works. Well, we finally have something that at least has the hallmarks of a workable plan. So
for people out there, again, watching this morning, who is eligible, how do they get involved with it, and what does the process involve?
Well, the process starts as follows. You've got to get a personal insolvency practitioner. Say, for example, if you had property and you were unable to pay and you wanted to opt for personal insolvency. You go to them. They decide whether you can even get into this plan or not, because not everybody will. There is certain things you need to meet to qualify, and then they draw up a plan. They present it to the banks. You're under a protective notice during that time, and then the banks have a choice of either accepting the plan, which is based on your creditors voting, but typically it's all going to be banks, and if you've got mortgage debt, that's going to be the biggest voting rights anyway, and they can either agree to it or veto it.
Banks, from sitting here, banks like two things, money and control, and they're not going to like a third party becoming involved in this. That's where I would think about it, but is that the reality on the ground? Are banks giving good feedback to this?
I kind of hear two different sets of rumours. I mean, the world of finance is full of rumours. It's second probably only to the world of, you know,
showbiz.
like showbiz, minus any of the glamour. Some are saying that they want to engage with this. It will find a way to get involved with their clients, you know, get a process, have some kind of solution. You've got to remember, banks also are not good at this whole thing of collections. It's like, I jokingly say, it's like getting your old prudish aunt and saying, stand up and do a comedy routine and tell dirty jokes. It's just not their game. So perhaps having a third party is an answer. There's other banks, though, which we're hearing, and they're saying, no, we're going to veto everything because it's in our interest to keep that person on the hook forever, because in 10 years' time their situation will change, they'll get an inheritance, something will happen, which means that we're better off waiting than we are to crystallise losses in the here and now. So that's the thing, and you are right. Banks, they only want money, they want control. I jokingly say that, you know, when you hear they're only interested in one thing, you're not talking about men, you're talking about banks, and they're interested in money. They want to get the maximum return they can from their clients.
Again, let's go back to the people who might be eligible for these insolvency services. What are the criteria you need to meet for them to be able to offer you help? Well, I know they probably change dramatically from case to case, but the basic criteria.
Well, the main one for personal insolvency is in the name. You've got to be insolvent. You know, you can't just go in and say, hey, listen, I've got loads of money and I'm now opting to not pay anymore, so offer me this service. You can't have debts in excess of €3 million, but if all of the lenders agree, they can obviously agree to a package that's bigger than that, but that's kind of the upward bar. You have to have been engaged with the banks for the last 6 months, and then you have to qualify with the personal insolvency practitioner, who I should add is, you know, a recently qualified professional in this area. So they're really the ones who are going to tell you whether you're going to be able to avail of it or not. The Insolvency Service of Ireland is going to publish a list this week of people, so you can find out who the people are in your area. You can call them, you can talk to them. They're the ones who are qualified to tell you what you can and can't do. They're the ones who will put together the plan, submit it through the process. So really, if it's a case that you're worried about this, I would tell people, first of all, you know, worrying doesn't fix anything. It's a total waste of time. You should be talking to your bank, and you should then give one of the insolvency practitioners a call.
Okay, from the point of view of people on the ground, and you hear what it's like at the coalface, are banks engaging with people? Are banks helping people to see a way through their insolvency, or are they being quite strident in their demands still?
Banks are engaging with people in a few different ways. They're doing what they always did, which is to, bully them to a degree, to try and, beat money out of them using legal threats and all the things that they normally do. That's always been one of their methods, and you just have to accept that's the way the world is.
Well, hasn't the legislation changed of late, that they can't harass you?
Well, actually, they made the legislation so that they could harass you more. They had changed it back in 2010 that they couldn't contact you more than 3 times a month. Well, that's reversed now, and they can contact you a lot more. So the level of engagement, harassment, call it, depending on what your view is, it's one or the other, that is actually going to increase. The protection in terms of not being able to repossess homes that was formed by a legal gap, that's now gone. So banks are still able to strong-arm people in many different ways. And for people who are entrepreneurs, they can take away overdrafts. They can do all sorts of things to make your life miserable. What we are seeing, though, is that they've been given targets by the central bank. That means that they've got to start ramping up their efforts. Second, we want to sell these banks, and no one in the world looks at Irish banks and thinks they're a good buy. Why? Because they've got a terrible reputation, they're not dealing with their problems, and they've been shown to tell lies in the past. So these are all things that aren't conducive with selling on an institution for any profit. As a matter of fact, we probably couldn't even give them away as it stands today. So if we want to have a banking sector that's vibrant, and the banks know this themselves, then they've got to get a good reputation. And the way to do that is to solve your problems and not have these little time bombs ticking away in the background where someone might come in and say, oh, this is lovely. Oh, maybe it's not so lovely. There's 2 time bombs in that room and another one upstairs. Like, that's not what you want. So there's a lot of different pressures coming into play.
Very, very quickly, Karl, I know you wanted to mention the Kilkenny Trust.
Oh yeah, that's a group down in Kilkenny that say that they found a way to remove your bank debt by putting your property into a trust. I went down and met with the promoters of it, and I think it's important that people are aware that this is something that could end up worse for you in the future. Like, there's obvious taxation issues with it. There is no magical way to just make bank debt disappear. Like, if I told someone you want to lose weight and take this blue pill, and that's all there is to it. I mean, it's not true. You know it's not.
But when you're desperate.
Well, if you're desperate, you tell someone who's drowning, take this rock, it floats, they might try it.
So your advice is to avoid it, to stay away from it?
Listen, there's a whole area of official process that is the known one, that is known to work, and then there's this magical one that just makes debts disappear. Personally, I remain very sceptical. OK, well, hopefully the insolvency services and the targets set by the central bank will mean that people will find it slightly easier to get through their mortgage woes. Thank you very much, Karl, as always. Thank you.